It is 7 o'clock in the PM. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wonderful people. Thank you so much for joining our Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, third pre-conference education session. Woo-hoo. Tonight, we are going to welcome our very own Cindy Laatsch. Cindy is a past district director. She's a past region advisor. She is a wealth of knowledge, and we are very excited to have her here with us tonight. Strengths, we all have them. Although I know for me, sometimes when I'm not in a very upbeat mood, I couldn't tell you any strengths that I have. I have none at that point. But we do have different strengths. And knowledge of what we do well, this can be a game changer. Tonight, we are going to be discussing your strengths using the top 5 concept from Strengths Finder 2.0. Hang on, I just lost my page. Let's welcome, whether you know, so we're going to discuss those top 5 concepts from the Strengths Finder 2.0. Whether you know your top 5 or not, during tonight's session, you will come away with increased self-awareness and a better understanding of how you lead. Let's welcome Cindy Laatsch and lead with your strengths. Do more of what you do best. Cindy, you have the virtual platform.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, team. Thank you all for being here. This is a topic I love to discuss, how to lead with the strength you have and do more of what you do best. And now I'm trying to be fancy, so let's see if I can, there we go. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to get an understanding of what are strengths. What are strengths? How do you identify what you do well already? And that's the key. It is what you do well already. We're going to do a breakout exercise. It looks like there's a nice number of people in the room, so it'll work well. We're then going to do a debrief, and then we're going to look at next steps and do a little practicing. How do you practice your strengths? What I wanted to do at this point was open this up and just say, let's talk about strengths. What are strengths? Here are some: communicator, strategic, arranger. And I'm big into collaborative, so feel free. In fact, I want to open up my chat right now. Feel free to enter into the chat throughout this presentation. Also, feel free to raise your hand and come in with a comment, and Zoom masters and others, if I don't see you, please just open your mic and come on in, or the Zoom master can let me know. So if you had to say, what is something I do well? Who could share something they think they do well? All right, I'm going to give some just to get the prompt going. Consistency, that's a strength, right? Empathetic, that's a strength. Who else? So Joe said networking. Chris said proofreading, that's a gift. That is a gift to be able to proofread. Thank you. Oh, Liz has done Strength Finder. Pardon, go ahead.
Proofreading.
Proofreading. You're a very good proofreader. Yes, absolutely. All right. So Liz Pollock, you have obviously done Strength Finder. Liz's top 5 are maximizer, woo, positivity, and 2 more. So
I'll look for them. Yeah.
Okay. You can look for them. Absolutely. So strengths are those innate talents that you don't have to learn. Yes. Thank you, Susan. Absolutely. They're kind of like your breathing. It's what you do naturally. Monica said listening. That is such a skill, to have that ability to deeply listen to people. Ed, an achiever, somebody who likes to do things, get things done. Carol says learning, listening, and supporting. Those sound like very empathetic, supportive. And Jason is analytical, context, learner, relator. Nope, analytical, context, learner, input, and deliberative. Now that's interesting, Jason. I'm input learner, intellection, relator, and connectedness. So very interesting. Jerry Ward, that is a true attribute, being able to give credit to others. That is a very positive feature. And what we want to do today is we want to talk about your strengths, your individual strengths, and then let's throughout this look at through the lens. I always say it's like your glasses. You look through the lens of tonight we're talking about Toastmasters. How can you use your strength or strengths, because we all have several, to really support your club, your members, your board, Toastmasters International? Everyone brings a gift to this. And that is why we're going to look at identifying strengths tonight and then working with your strength. So how do you identify what you do well? There are many methods to do this. And Chris mentioned in my introduction that we have Strength Finder 2.0, which is now called Clifton Strengths. Clifton was the gentleman who came up with the process. And I had the good fortune of being certified as a strength coach. So it's something I'm very familiar with, but there are many other ways. There's DISC, and I think, Chris, you've done DISC, haven't you? Yep. Do you remember what you are? No. Okay. So DISC is a way you profile strengths and personalities. Myers-Briggs, do we have people that have done Myers-Briggs? Lots of people. Susan has done Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is an interesting test. You can take it online. It has no cost. And I think you can do some DISC work as well online at no cost. Myers-Briggs really talks to us about how we use our energy. So it's how do I use my energy? So when you combine Myers-Briggs and other personality profiling, you start to really get rich dimension. So I'm seeing in strength that we have an ENFP in Myers-Briggs. So Liz, do you know what that stands for? Can you share what that is?
I belong to the National Speakers Association, and it's an ENFP tribe. There are a couple of outliers who aren't, but that's what a lot of speakers are. Most of them are coaches too. It's extrovert, intuitive, receptive.
EN, and then if it's feeling, yep. So ISTJ, and Jason, I'm an ENTJ. So we're kind of like a mirror image to each other. And Ed, you're an ENTJ. I knew we had a lot in common, Ed. So Myers-Briggs talks about how you use your energy. There's also one online I've not done yet, but it's called the High Five Test. And there's also one called mypersonality.com. And these are all methods that you can use to start to really look at what do I do well? And what you do well is important because I believe firmly what I used to do was I looked for what I didn't do well, and I'd have to try to remediate that. Well, Cindy, you're not that good at math, right? Cindy, you're not that good at maybe thinking strategically. I have to work really hard at that. And once I discovered the flip of that, wait a minute, there are some things I do well already. I'm going to do more of that. And then what happens in that concept is all your skills increase when you start to do more of what you do well. All right, there's some really good chat in here. You just get a stronger weakness working on a flaw. Very, very insightful, Liz. And Ed says, I don't naturally look like an E, but you've drawn toward more energy. Absolutely. It's where you want to get your energy from. So let's just talk a little bit before we go further about the concept of Strength Finder. Any of these processes is like a toolkit. And the toolkit is yours to have, and then use those tools in your life, in Toastmasters, in your work, in your family, and in your community. So in Strength Finder, we all have 34 strengths. Everyone in the world, it's been done globally. 29 million, I think, people have done Strength Finder as of recent count. It's deep and profound information. But 34 strengths, it's interesting. But I found it's your top 5 that really help you see the world more clearly. And once again, I use the analogy. My top 5 are like the glasses I wear. They give me a crisp perspective, and they're also how I see the world. So my top 5 of input, and learner. This one was funny. Intellection. I had to Google that because I wasn't sure what it meant. Intellection means I like to think about how people think. And why is that important? Because when you're working with groups of people, I have found for me, if I have a better understanding of what you need, how you process and think, I can really flex my style accordingly. So when you identify your top 5, you start to become more self-aware. And I believe that is the key. Anything you do, Myers, top 5, my personality, all of these are tools to increase your awareness of yourself. I know sometimes we, in this very busy world, we can lead a very tunnel down, head down life. And we don't often stop and become aware. What am I feeling right now? What do I really think right now? And when you dig into what your strengths are and where you like to go, you find your self-awareness increases as well. One thing, regardless of what tool you use, these are not things to use to diagnose others. Meaning when you're in a team, and you might all have done it, or some of you may have done it, sometimes, especially when it's new, we're like, oh yes, they're an activator, I can tell. Or that's a creative person, yep, I can tell. We really can't. So I really caution everyone, please look at anything you dig into as how can you increase your awareness of yourself. But the beauty of this is when teams of people come together with this information on themselves and they fully own it, you can come together and function so effectively as a team. When I understand that, say, Susan Brushaber is incredibly responsible and she has things that supplement and augment my strengths, collectively, when we come to a project, a meeting, we create a common brain, right? We can, it's better to have 10 brains than it is to have one. So please look at creating self-awareness, which is vitally important, but also as you start to team, hugely important in Toastmasters. Think club meeting, think board, think Toastmasters International, think committees. When you understand and everyone understands, it creates that incredible awareness. So why do you need to know what you do well? I think it's like having almost a magic mirror. The mirror told me who I am, and learning that is key to my success. Not just my success, but I used to move through the world and have some frustrations about things. When I was in the work world, there were certain people, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there were certain people that I would get feelings about, and I would become internally reactive to what they said or how they presented. Once I started to understand what I do, how to practice it effectively, and how to really dig into what is positive, I started to understand that knowing myself was the key. It's not knowing how others work, that might come later. If you know yourself, that is the key. Because what I realized was starting to understand your key is also starting to understand your why. My why was things like, Cindy, why do you get upset about that certain thing? Why does that person in the workplace cause you angst? And I don't know about you, because we all manifest it differently, but when I would feel stress, right, there's things you can do. There's fight, flight, freeze, and flop, right? When I would feel stressed, a couple things would happen for me because I wasn't dealing with it. I wasn't dealing with myself and knowing who I was. I would, if I felt my heartbeat, my heart would be racing. And then I'm fair and I'm Irish, so I would turn pinky, pinky, pink, and I would get that little blush, maybe a little perspiration too. And this was my body signaling me, Cindy, something is causing you duress. And I didn't equate it to the decisions I was making. So it's hugely important that you start to look at that. And there's a big word out there nowadays, which is trigger. That triggers me, or I feel triggered, or the other one, which is they push my buttons. Have you ever heard that? Somebody pushed my, boy, they pushed my buttons in that meeting. And I'm a firm believer. We don't have buttons. There are no buttons here. You cannot activate a button in me. What I did discover was when I learned more about myself, and this is a lifelong journey. This is not a one and done. I could understand why I felt certain ways in certain situations. It wasn't that colleague, and I'll be truthful, there was a colleague who she and I just could never mesh. I would think, boy, if she could just change, if she would just stop doing that, if she would just not be that way. And what I finally figured out is, Cindy, that is your bias. It was how I was reacting using the skill set I was or wasn't developing. So I am not a big believer that you are triggered, but we make choices. So triggers are really ways that yourself is being revealed. Now, as we look at the next step in kind of this concept of identifying what you're good at, I want to ask a question to the group, and I'd like to have open mic or chat. Describe what a balcony means to you. What do you think of when I say the word balcony? Susan, go ahead.
A balcony physically is a very high place. It's usually a nice place to look down from. You get to see everything. If we're relating it to the strengths, it would be where you're at your best, where you're functioning in the best that you can.
Where you're at your best. Okay. So any other good imagery of balcony? A place for flowers or to smoke? That's a good one. A place for flowers. Yes. It's usually somewhere we say it's more positive, I think, like you were saying, Susan. I think it has more of a positive connotation. Or think about going to the theater, right? I'm sitting in the balcony, right? You have the best seat. You can see everything. You have visibility. So the balcony has a connotation, as does a basement. So the next slide, I wanted to give you what I think of are visuals. So that's a balcony, right? And that's a basement. So the balcony of a strength, regardless of what your strength is when it's working, when it's in flow, when it's going great. When you are, let's say, let's go back up in the chat. Let's look at a strength. Nancy, you say you're a good idea generator. Would you be able to share with the group, when you're doing that, how does it make you feel?
Excited for possibilities mostly.
Excited, right? Because you're bringing forth, you're creating ideas, which then other people hook on to, and they create. I call it the second right answer, right? Everybody keeps working. So you felt positive and energized. Let's go back and look some more. Paul, you're a connector. When you're in that flow, what does that feel like to you?
It feels so natural and so positive, and it gives me a lot of worth that I can help connect other people and other things. Is just an amazing feeling for me.
Now, for the people that, and I know what you mean, but so can you give me an example of what would you do as a connector, say in a Toastmaster meeting or in give us an example of what does that mean to be a connector?
Oh, perfect example. As many know, I visit a lot of clubs in different states, and I happened to be in Wisconsin before I moved here. I went to Toastmasters Club and there were 2 guests. And I truly believe it was because of the conversation I had with those guests that they joined that night. Because I said, I visit Toastmasters clubs all over the place. And when you visit, if it doesn't feel like home, don't join, find another one that does. This, I can tell you right now, is an awesome club with awesome people. It really be great for you. And also I see in you from our conversation, what you might bring to that club. And all of a sudden they get it and they join.
Yes.
Because I can't stand it when I go to a Toastmasters club and people are not given permission to join. It just bothers me.
Oh, it makes me go, ooh, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's
And the
crazy.
reason I say given permission, we're used to Toastmasters. We know that everyone is welcome. That
Yes.
isn't true across every club and every organization. Some you have to be vetted in or recommended. And Toastmasters, those of us who like to follow the rules will actually vote people in for good reason. But everyone knows unless there's history with that particular person, they're going to be voted in.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. And that's interesting. You said that about joining, because last year I'm currently the president of a club, and you used to say, it's real common to say, we'd love to have you back. It was great to have you. I changed that this year. At the end, I say, we would love to have you join our club. We would love to have you be a member with us. And 50-50 shot, right? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
But by completely making that available, that is a connection. So very positive. Oh, I see some more in the chat here. So Chris is talking about a balcony is where you relax and find yourself. Oh, I like that. And Monica says, it's working, it's in flow. And that is what it is when you're dealing with your strengths. When you're in flow, you all commented about it feels good. I know it. It's positive. I feel it. Well, here's what happens in a basement. Don't you love that image? So that's a pretty clean basement, really. But a basement can be dark, humid. Don't you put your junk in the basement? Like I don't want to throw this out because my mother-in-law gave it to me, but I'm going to put it in the basement, right? So you put your baggage in the basement. Well, that's what it is with strengths. So it's called the grip. It's the opposite of flow, right? We know flow. Flow feels good. We feel it. When you're in the grip of your strength, something funny happens. You don't know it. You know it only when people either tell you if they're brave enough, or no one will make eye contact with you. So if somebody's like, oh, I can't talk to her right now, you need to examine yourself, right? So here's a balcony concept, my own story. I worked at Harley Davidson for many years and eventually got a job in IT. I am not an IT person. I'd worked there for 18 years, but got a job in IT. The weekend before, I'm reading, looking, studying online. My husband, who's been in IT for 40 years, goes, what are you doing? And I said, I'm trying to learn all about IT. He said, well, Cindy, they're going to teach you that. And IT is very custom. Every environment is very unique, and they're going to teach you that. And I think you'll do fine, right? That was the basement of learner. Learner is my second strength. I love to learn, but I was in the grip of learning. Learning had become something very negative because I felt I'm not prepared. I'm not going to be good enough. I'm going to go in and they're not going to say I'm smart enough. That was my grip. But here's the really funny thing. I couldn't feel it. I didn't know it. I needed that mirror of my husband saying, hey, are you okay? You look really stressed out. So always remember, whatever you're dealing with, whether it's creativity, strategic thinking, consistency, when it's working, you feel it. When it isn't working, you usually feel like banging your head against a wall, right? That's one of your notes. Stop doing that, or at least take a breath. Take a breath, much as I did with his feedback. And I said, you're right. I can't be expected, much as we know in Toastmasters, I can't be expected to know something until I start the process of doing the thing. So really remember that balcony and basement concept. We're going to do a quick breakout. And I'm saying it's going to be quick because we're going to have fun with this one. We're going to do a breakout session. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for putting 3 people in every room. And I can't see how many people are in the room, but the goal would be 3 people in every room. There'll probably be a room with 4. So Jason, are you doing breakout rooms today?
Yep, I've got it.
Okay, and how many rooms do you have?
I was going to do 5.
Okay, and so there's going to be 3 people in each room?
Yep, 3 to 4.
3 to 4, okay. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to be put into a room, it's completely random. Each person is going to pick one of their strengths, whether that's empathetic, the ability to focus, the ability to be an effective communicator, whatever it is you choose. And you're going to share for a minute, maybe two, your personal insights about what that strength has provided for you. What have you learned from that strength? What are some stories you had where that strength was really brought forward? And what I do, and it's my personal thing, I tend to write things down. So I tend to write down the skill or the strength that I'm going to work with. We're going to go into a breakout room for 1 to 2 minutes per person, so everyone gets to share. If you could have someone be a casual timer, so you know that in about 4 to 5 minutes, you're going to come back in the room. And I want all of you to have shared your one strength that you choose to highlight and a couple stories that you want to share, and come back in the room, because we're going to do a big room debrief where we do some practice with our strengths. So any questions on what needs to happen in the breakout room?
And Cindy, for those who have not read the book yet,
Oh,
would it be helpful to read some of the strengths that they have listed?
yeah, thank you for that, Paul. It doesn't need to just be Strength Finder.
Right.
So it can be if you've done it, but if you haven't, and I wrote down some things: self-assuredness, consistency, empathy, focus, communicator. I'm well organized. I'm a planner. I'm an idea generator like Nancy. So whatever your personal strength, whatever you can go, that's what people always tell me. I'm the responsible one, or I'm the funny one, or whatever your strength is. So feel comfortable in whatever strength it is. If you do know your top 5, pick whichever one's relevant, but that is not required. So other than that, that's a good question though. Other than that, any other questions before we pop you into a breakout room?
And you could this these 5 bullet points be put in the chat to remind us?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Could these 5 bullet points please be put in the chat to remind us while we are in the breakout room?
Sure,
Different.
absolutely. We will put, and so just remind me, so Jason, if I put it in the main chat, it'll carry into all breakout rooms?
If they grab it now, it sometimes
Here's
disappears.
something I learned to do, and I know this is kind of funny. Take a picture of the screen if you can. Here it is in general. Each of you talk about a strength you have for about a minute. Talk about it, why it's worked for you, and then everybody talk about your strength, and then we're going to come back in after that. So kind of in a nutshell, that's it. But I'll try it. Well, when we go into the session, I will put stuff in chat and we'll see what happens. Sound like a plan?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, I'll put it in chat. Breakout. I'll see you back soon for the debrief.
All right, hitting the button now. But Chris, I didn't assign you.
I was just
So-
looking. That's
So
Thank you,
can-
that's just
You can
fine.
self-pick a smaller room if you want, or stay out here, but I left the co-hosts off. So, because otherwise Cindy would have went too.
right, right. Okay.
All right, I might put stuff in the chat. So,
What
And
I'll
then
also
Laura-
do is I'll broadcast that also.
okay, super. Laura, did you need help getting into a room? That's all right.
Might be on.
I'm having internet issues, so I may drop in and out. Yeah, I'm gonna join now.
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
Laura.
Trying to
Doing
join.
very well.
Jason, is it
Telling me I
possible to put Laura in the room?
She's already assigned, so the best thing for her to do is join herself. Otherwise, I can.
Okay.
There's kind of a
So,
funky thing I have to do.
Laura, you know, on the bottom, there's the 3 dots and it says breakout rooms.
Otherwise,
I'm moving her to a different room and then
move her
I'll
back.
join that room.
Okay, yeah, okay, that sounds good. I will
And then
move
I'm going
you
to coast in and out of the rooms.
Sounds good. I will stay out here. So Laura, you should have a new pop-up, hopefully. Start the record. You want me to bring them back?
Yeah, did you give him a minute?
Yeah, I did. I can, but I can make the minute be a little longer.
Yeah, that training minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, you can bring him back.
Okay, I'm gonna hit close then.
Absolutely.
And they'll have 60 seconds to come back anyways.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Thank
You make
you.
it look so easy peasy.
Random assign is the easiest. It's when we have to
Yeah.
get people where they want to go.
Oh, yeah, no,
Hardest thing.
that is
Or
not a
where we
strength
want
I
them to
have. My blood pressure goes. We're talking about Zoom room details.
Mhm.
All right, we are coming back. We are coming back. Hmm. All right, we have folks coming back. Is everybody back, Jason?
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome back. That was kind of a whirlwind, but sometimes those are fun. So thank you for participating and being part of that Zoom experience. What I'd like to do now is really look at a quick debrief. And I thought what we could do is have some people volunteer to talk about, kind of in that round robin, it doesn't need to be anything official, but to talk about what did you learn in the room? Did anything surprise you, either about yourself or something else you heard about others? And, if you could kick it off by sharing what was your key strength that you decided to talk about. So do we have any volunteers? Would anyone like to go first?
We can start. My group.
All right, Yuri, because darn it, if nobody went first, I was going to use that classic line that that's okay, let's just go to the second person. All right, Yuri, you're on. Share with us, what strength did you share about yourself?
The strength I share about myself is it can be filed under the flexibility column, where I tend to understand more that people have, specifically in Toastmasters, they have no surprise many priorities, and to avoid being nudging without in a almost pushy kind of way. But lately I'm using flexibility to acknowledge that they might not be able to show up in a meeting. Instead, they use that as a opportunity to check in with them periodically as a way to encourage them without simply saying, "Oh, come to Toastmasters." Instead, maybe check in weekly or twice a week and just say, just thinking about you. And by the way, there's a meeting tomorrow.
Oh, so powerful what you just said. And I understand that. I think when I was more of a new, excited Toastmaster, it was like, you said you were going to be there. You weren't there. Versus I love that when you said check in with them. Because right, life intercedes. Sometimes life happens when you're in Toastmasters or your job and something happens. And I really like that. To be flexible enough to say, love to have you there. And if you can't make it, let me check in on you. So, and flexibility, I think, is also really when we can learn to relax within ourselves, right? You can learn to relax within yourself. Anyone else would like to share what was a strength about yourself you highlighted in the discussion? Does anyone have one they'd like to share?
I'll share, Cindy.
Thank you, Ed.
So I actually talked about two, which were learner and analytical. They're both in my top 5 strengths, and those that know me probably are not surprised by either one of those or the other 3 that I had. And I did mention achiever in the comments. How I looked at it was more because I'm looking for new roles at work. Those are strengths that I'm been really trying to highlight to people that are interviewing me, because partially that's what they're looking for in the roles, but that's where I feel I can add the most value to their team.
That's really big because, you know, that I always joke when I was younger, I think I could have interviewed for any job and probably got it if I worked hard enough. But then when I got the job, I'd be like, I can't do that job. So I think you're really smart. You're talking about interviewing with people and really highlighting your strength. Who am I? What do I do well? And I think when someone is looking to hire people, that's what they want to know. That sincerity. How does learner, so Liz just put in, how does learner differ from input? So my top strength is called input. My second is learner. So what input means is I have 10 books that I'm reading. I watch documentaries. During the day when I'm working on the computer, I might have some documentary running, PBS. When I see somebody managing their calendar really effectively, I'll say, how did you do that? I really find that interesting. So I'm always seeking data and inputs, whether that's about me, my behavior, how could I perform better? And learner is sort of more that classic, I love to learn new things. I would go to college if they paid well enough, right? I want to learn and stretch. And that's why I think Toastmasters for many of us is such a sweet spot. So that's the difference, Liz. Input means just I like to pull in a lot of data and then I synthesize it, and that helps me make decisions or have clarity. So good answers though, back to Ed. Thank you for that about especially interviewing for jobs. How wonderful. In fact, one thing that I suggest people when you're doing job seeking or LinkedIn, and if you happen to know those strengths, list them in your signature line. That's a great cue to a lot of people when they're looking is, who is the person? Oh, I know, they're these 5 things. So that's a really nice thing to add. We have one more person that would like to share. What did you discuss about what you do well in the discussion room? Anyone else? I'm going to ask Jerry, because I was in Jerry's room and I was just like totally like at that quote. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Jerry, can you talk about your strength?
Sure. Well, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a longtime Toastmaster, and also that means I'm a senior citizen. And so my interest at this point in my life isn't necessarily about how to prepare myself to get a job or whatever, but I do have, I guess, the benefit of maybe some experience in trying not to overburden people with that. But one of the strengths, or I guess probably the thing that I talked about, and it's because I spent a good share of my 40-year career with one company being in upper management, and so the strength was to give credit and take blame. I used to say my job is to give credit and take blame, and
I think we lost Jerry. Let's see if he makes it back. Who was in his room? Does anyone, while he's trying to come back in, Monica, were you in his room? No.
No.
I was in there, Cindy.
Oh, Nancy, can you, while Jerry's trying to come back in, can you talk about that whole blame credit thing that you understood?
Yeah, it was interesting because I had had the opportunity in the past to work with Jerry, and I was like, wow, right on, even though we're not supposed to judge other people. But I really learned a lot from that, because he mentioned, you know, my job is to take blame as well. Well, sometimes that doesn't feel very good to do that, but that's generally the small piece of the whole situation. The whole thing is people want to know that they are valued, whatever it is that they're doing. So giving credit for the simplest things, it reminded me that I need to do that. You know, if I'm that idea generator, I can be, oh yeah, isn't this a great idea? But I need to give people credit for reining ideas in. I need to give people credit for small accomplishments as well as achieving their level 5 or whatever it might be.
Yes. Oh, and that's so big, what you just said. And that's a Toastmasters and life thing too. Giving credit when you've just finished something, we as human beings, we are thirsty for recognition, for good job, for thank you, for that meant the world to me. Thank you so much for taking my call. You know, those are the things, they don't seem huge, but they are. So really, really good observation there. But Jerry was talking about Ronald Reagan's quote that he'll always take the blame, right? And he'll always give the credit. And I think when you've ever had a really good leader, whether that is a work situation or a club, or when you have a really good leader, that's what leaders do. They want to pass out that credit. They want to give it away. Right? That's leadership. So awesome. Really good work in that room. It was fun to listen to all of you. You were all really sharing openly. And I think that's what's so important. So we've got some time left here. I just want to keep going on. What do you want to work on? And this is a question I asked myself many years ago when I kind of came to this understanding of, oh, there are some things I do better, some things I could get better on, but the things I do better already, what are they? And so I'm a big journal type. I do better when I physically write, even than when I type it. But I would write down, these are the things I think I do well, like people ask me about them, or I feel confident when I do them. And what I realized over time is it's not like a gift. It doesn't just happen like a magic wand. You have to practice. And remember, there's that classic quote about, I'm nervous about giving my speech. And I would always say, whether in a contest or a club, did you practice? No. Well, then I can see why you're nervous, right? So that's why practice is so important. So once you identify things you do well, things you feel positive about with yourself, I'm a firm believer, I would write them down. Let's say that would be, I'm consistent, I'm an idea generator, I love to give praise, whatever those are. Then I challenge you to look for ways to practice that. And it's very easy to start to practice it in a small world like your Toastmaster meeting. So when you come in, you would start to be more observant of how you are in the meeting. If you're that person that gives those positive feedback, it's kind of like, good job. I really enjoyed that speech. Or what I love is when you're in chat in a meeting, that was incredible. You motivated me, right? Look for ways to practice that skill set. And I'm a big believer in there's a woman that I respect so deeply in our club named Natalie, and she believes in the power of intention. You must set your intentions, meaning I intend to develop my skill set. I intend to practice it. And I realized I needed to envision it happening. I needed to see myself going to that place, having that positive conversation, kind of like a dress rehearsal in your mind. And back in the day when the Olympics, I think, and Ed, you're a big Olympics guy, and I know that at some point, the East Germans were very, very, very successful, especially in their women's gymnasts. And it was back where they were really using the power of mindfulness before it really had become something. And so they would practice in their mind, their routines. And what they found was your brain cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is in the brain. So practice it, envision it, see yourself being successful using that skill set. And I wanted to sort of take one as we're looking at this in a Toastmasters lens tonight. In your Toastmasters experience, so in your Toastmasters experience, and if could I have someone who hasn't maybe shared yet, do you have a strength that you'd, or a skill set you have that you could share with the group right now? What's this? We've heard about several of them. Does anyone else have one they'd like to share? I'm looking for hands. Jan, would you be comfortable? I was in your room and I was listening to what you were talking about. Would you be comfortable having a little? Okay, so I wanted to just kind of talk about when you identify something you do well, and we're talking about Toastmasters tonight because I firmly believe it makes a difference. So Jan, you mentioned a couple, but what was one of the things you mentioned that you know about yourself that you have a skill in?
Organizing things.
Organizing things. Oh, I so admire you. I just like to go into the organizational department of stores to make myself feel better, right? But people who have that skill are to be admired. So as I look at your Toastmasters experience, whether that's your club, if you're on a board, I understand you are in district, you're serving in a district role this year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So as you look at whatever that strength is, and this is an exercise I'm challenging you guys to take out of here, is don't think about what you can't do. You think about what you can do. A lot of times we'll say, oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Versus youth said right out of the gate, I have strength in organizing things. So as you look at your Toastmaster world, however you define that, can you think of ways you could introduce that skill to benefit your Toastmasters experience?
Well, as Jennifer has pointed out, I did use it in helping with the November gala and taking care of all those pesky details, making sure things were organized in that way. In my club, I helped with a group of people to go through our files and get rid of unneeded material. We're celebrating 75 years. We've accumulated a lot of things we don't necessarily need to keep in files. So we went through that. And after we discarded things we no longer needed, I spent quite a lot of time organizing those files and typing up labels and getting that all set.
You are gifted in this skill. And you know what I love about this, because my mind, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't know if I could do that. But it sounds like you have like a laser beam focus. Right? It sounds like you could be very focused.
When I'm in the zone, as Monica said, then yes.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is incredible. So each of you, and Yuri, we're right at the time, but Yuri, I see your hands up. Good job, Jan. Thank you for that analogy. Yuri, did you have a comment?
I'm looking at the slide you have right now, Cindy, and one of the bullet points that maybe you could explain more is the third one, the very last one, why a trigger is a good thing.
I'm getting there. So hold tight. We're almost there. Absolutely. So first of all, as I'm challenging you all to think of a strength you have, a skill set you have, and how you can bring that into your Toastmaster experience. And you do that by identifying your skill. I had to write it down. Like, we'll use Jen. I am a very good organizer. Think of how you can use that, whether that's working on that gala, setting up the website, supporting someone that needs help when they're doing something, taking your skill, envisioning where you can use it in Toastmasters, and bring that gift. That is a gift that you have. And when people, I always say a trigger can be a good thing, meaning when something happens and I feel that, that rush, that, oh my goodness, that is telling me, Cindy, you need to pay attention to this. This is important. A lot of times in the past, my mind would sort of shut off when I maybe felt some anxiety or stress. But now when you feel that, that's telling you, now's the time I need to be self-aware. So there's so much in Toastmasters that we can bring, even if we bring our just one skill in. And I'm really challenging you to take that as a mindset out of this meeting. Now, I know we are coming up on time, but I want to open the floor at this point. Anyone have questions, comments, observations, input? Open up your mic and come on in. Oh, I'm seeing a good one. Susan, I love your comment. Jan, your organizer would be so helpful for the new Toastmaster who says, I don't know where to start. Oh, that's hugely impactful. Hugely. All right, questions, thoughts? What project or pathways go best with strengths? You know, Strength Finder is really firm about the fact that it isn't to be used as a job finding tool. It isn't to be used to compartmentalize data in any way. It's truly a self-reflective mirror. So I have found, whether it's Strength Finder or DISC or whatever it is you're looking at, they fit in many different projects, because if you look at your projects in Toastmasters, a lot of them are focused on your learning, your emotional intelligence. So, you know, it really works well in a lot of settings. Oh, and yes, Jerry, we filled in on your story. It was a great one. So just so that you know, you were represented well.
Thank you, everyone.
Monica, there is a really, and I can share this after the meeting, there is actually a really cool matrix that I've put together that you list team members and their strengths. And what it allows you to do is to really look at where your gaps are or where your positives are. So I will get the list of attendees and I'll send that out. And it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful tool. Anything else? We're looking at just 5 minutes, so we're on time. Yuri, do I see your hand up, or was that from before?
Well, no, it's still up. No, just something appeared in my mind. This is probably generally true in many organizations, especially today. What kind of exercise can be done in say a weekly or bi-weekly team meeting that's say limited to half an hour? Typically people will go through some of their updates or whatever they're working on, some of the challenges they have, and then usually there is I don't know, 15-20 minutes left, and just to make it more valuable to everybody, what kind of exercise have you seen or have you tried that can slowly begin to help team members identify? I found that in the past, my manager tried that. It sort of fizzled out for whatever reason. But at the same time, what we've been talking about is you measure practice and something to introduce it to everyone in my team without making them feel that it's another task they end up doing for 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, there's great books out there and on how to be team and how to do exercises. There's one that I've done in many meetings and I found it so fascinating, is you take a brown paper, everybody does this private. You take like a brown paper lunch bag and you put something in the bag that has deep meaning for you, whatever that is. And you bring it, it's closed, and you bring it to the meeting. Maybe it's one person a week, and you put the bag and then you take it out and you tell the story. And I think the one that was most impactful for me, and I didn't get it at first, is the woman brought her little brown paper lunch bag out and she reached in and she took out a little Tupperware container, just a little Tupperware container. And in the little Tupperware container, she had her wedding ring. And she said, one thing I want you all to know about me is I work really hard and I love work, but when I leave work, I'm all about my family and I keep them in an entirely separate container than my work world. And so what you do is you use that thing, whether it's a pen or a teddy bear, to tell stories of self. And it just continues to that unfold that the more we know about each other, the more kind we can be to each other. So there's absolutely, and love to talk about those kind of things in the future if you'd like. Liz, I see your hand is up as well.
Yes, thank you. I have multiple questions. Are you giving this presentation outside of Harley or Toastmasters? Are you monetized? I mean, I know you get paid to do career coaching and things aside of Harley, but are you running the circuit or are you still full-time at Harley?
No, I retired last year. So
Oh,
I
you
am
did? Okay.
retired. I retired so that I have more time for my Toastmasters work. And I do this because I find it so meaningful. And yes, I'm doing it in some groups, Toastmasters groups and non-Toastmaster groups and out and about. So it is something I've done. In fact, I had a Toastmaster club ask me if I'd come in and do it for their board. So I'm completely open to supporting anyone in any way they can.
Exciting.
Absolutely.
We just had at METC, which is a technical school in our area. We just
Yeah.
had, there was like a counselor who was giving a class and I was too busy to take it. It was on self-compassion. That's a form of coaching too, but it just seems like you've done a lot of the main ones. Have you had an experience or I just got an audio book, but I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but have you looked at that yet too? Because that seems like a hot topic too.
It sounds interesting. And since I have input, I'll just add that as book number 12 to my current reading. So absolutely. Well, I want to stay on time. So what I wanted to do is just really challenge you and thank you. First of all, thank you for being here this evening. It's so exciting that we're getting into the District 35 spring event where we learn, we connect, we get to really reconnect with our peers and our friends. So I'm very excited. I was so thrilled to be able to speak to you this evening. And one thing I do want to challenge each of you is we all make the difference in Toastmasters. It's the gift you bring that makes this experience so meaningful and whole and wonderful. So really consider looking at what you do, bring that gift in, give it freely because you'll be helping and supporting so many people in the process. So thank you for being here. And I'd like to close with a Simon Sinek quote, one of my favorites. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. And I know what all of you believe as Toastmasters this evening, and I thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time. Have a great conference.
Thank you, Cindy.
Cindy, thank you so much. I learn new things. I love when I can hear someone who I've heard speak before. And it's been a couple of years since I've heard you talk about StrengthsFinder. And I love when I'm able to pick up something new, reuse it again, refresh my memory on it. Thank you so much for coming this evening. And let me share with you, congratulations, certificate of appreciation for all that you do, not just for tonight, but for all of your time in Toastmasters. You have given so much back to our district, and we truly appreciate it. I am going to ask everyone before you leave, I'm going to drop a link into the chat box. If you can take some time tonight to share a few comments or an evaluation for Cindy so that we can give her some feedback. How can she continue to improve her strengths? We will stay on for about 20 minutes or so if anyone would like to stay and just kind of talk in general. If we have more than a few conversations that want to happen, we can always make a couple of breakout rooms so we can go in and out. And if you need to leave because it is just past 8 o'clock, feel free to do that. I do invite all of you to come back tomorrow evening. Our last of our pre-conference education sessions will be at number 4 tomorrow night. I blink and the time flies by. Tomorrow night we have Velda Ford, and she is going to talk about the keys to being a healthy Toastmaster. And hopefully I will be much healthier with my voice tomorrow night. Thank you again, everyone, so much for your time and attention. And Cindy dropped her email into the chat box. If you do want to reach out to her individually, you can do that. Thank you again.